I have not summoned you for censure, but to speak earnestly. Rogel Dawn thought there was no higher purpose to the existence of the Astartes than the unification of mankind. I see that in you also, and his determination. I, need men who fight bravely, even when faced with great tragedy. I have seen with my own eyes in recent days how you inspire intense loyalty in those around you. And I see you hold duty above glory or vengeance. My brother would be proud. Reassemble your chapter, Pedro Cantor, and look now to the future, rather than the past. The Loki sector and the Imperium entire has need of you. The successor chapters of the Adeptus Astartes would forge many deeds across the stars in blood, sweat, and toil. Some would become synonymous with glory, others grim necessity, and a select few would garner a reputation as among the most noble warriors of the Imperium. For today, we shall elucidate a storied chapter known as quite possibly the most valiant of the Angels of Death, the stalwart defenders of the innocent, the Crimson Fists. In the wake of the internment of the Master of Mankind upon the Golden Throne, with the conclusion of the Horus Heresy, a new generation of Astartes would be needed to combat the foul terrors of the galaxy. The legions of old had proven disastrous for the well-being of humanity, and shown that even among the Emperor's angels, none were beyond the enticements of chaos. In order to prevent further catastrophe of another civil war led by demagogues commanding vast Astartes armies, the Primarch of the Ultramarines, Rabute Guilliman, would pen a codex to limit their strength. Known as the Codex Astartes, this revered tome would outline the organization of the Legiones Astartes into smaller, successor chapters. The Sons of Rogel Dawn, the Imperial Fists, would sire a new founding comprised of its remaining strength. Aside from its primogenitor, the remaining two chapters would be characterized by the Legion's most prominent traits. The Black Templars would exhibit the zeal of its fury in battle, whilst the Legion's level-headed and collected souls would found the Crimson Fists. The most junior members of the 7th Legion, with exception to its senior commanders, the Crimson Fist would be led by their venerable hero of the heresy, Alexis Pollux, and venture forth into the void to claim new deeds and glories. The so-called Great Father of the chapter had proven his military genius during the Battle of Phal and duties to defend the Pharos device of Sofa, and would prove to be a worthy chapter master. An expert at naval tactics and an immensely imposing figure in stature, Pollux would lead his chapter for 800 years before perishing. Crusading across the stars as a fleet-based chapter, the Sons of Alexis would over time be regarded as among the most competent, loyal, and stalwart defenders of the Imperium. Serving predominantly within the Loki sector of the Segmentum Tempestus, with their aid given to the Emperor's Holy Inquisition and the Adeptus Administratum, the Crimson Fist would quell Xenos outbreaks and destroy corrupted Astartes chapters, such as the Sons of Gideon and the Marines Vigilant. Famed for their crusade of righteous liberation, which would last for 3 centuries and whittle down their number to only 128 Astartes. Building a close bond with the worlds of the Loki sector, the chapter would be granted feudal rights to establish their own chapter planet upon Rinnsworld. Gifted for their victory of the Voltigern Crusade, their new fiefdom of the Agriworld would, despite its proximity to viable neighboring recruitment worlds and resources, incur a heavy toll for the Crimson Fists. Constructing their new fortress monastery, the Arx Tyrannus, from the remains of their ancient battle barge, Rutulus Tyrannus, within the Hellblade Mountains of Rinnsworld's southern continent, the Crimson Fist would stave off countless greenskin invasions. Yet during 989.M41, a gigantic Orc war, led by the warlord Snagrod, the arch-arsonist of Caradon, would surround the Loki sector and resolve to conquer Rinnsworld. Massacring the defenders of the colony of Bad Landing, the citizenry would call for the aid of the chapter, to which its third company would heed their hails. Utterly defeated by the Xenos, The Third Company would face overwhelming opposition due to inaccurate intel reports, with few Astartes survivors escaping to their chapter world. Recalling every member of the chapter to Rin's world, the Lord Hellblade and Chapter Master of the Crimson Fists, Pedro Cantor, would organize the defense of their homeworld and brace themselves for the onslaught impending from Snagrod. An invasion force of unseen scale, save for the Greenskin invasion of the Second War for Armageddon, the Orc-War would reach the surface of the planet by using an obscenely suicidal warp maneuver, which no sane human would dare to attempt. Every company of the venerated and proud chapter would face the Xenos and employ orbital defense systems, tiered defensive lines, and their martial skill to combat the Orc menace. One of the planet's defense missiles would suffer a catastrophic failure and destroy the chapter's fortress monastery, causing a chain reaction within the chapter's arsenal of weapons, creating a vast explosion. Hundreds of Astartes, chapter serfs, and civilians would perish, leaving only 16 Astartes within the fortress monastery surviving its destruction. Rin's world's defenses would deactivate, allowing for the Orcs to overwhelm the surface. Reorganizing within the planet's capital of New Rin City, Pedro Cantor would reunite with the remaining Astartes of the chapter, numbering less than 400. Two choices would be presented to Cantor: marshal his men for a valiant last stand fated to extinguish the chapter's future deeds, or fight a guerrilla war of survival until reinforcements would arrive. Fighting for 18 solar months in small bands of warriors, the Crimson Fist would await the arrival of the Imperial Navy, and during 990.M41, the beleaguered Crimson Fists, now fewer in number than months prior, would face the Orc Xenos alongside fresh soldiers of the Astra Militarum, contingents of cousin Space Marine chapters, and deployments of Titan Legios of the Relief Fleet. Routing the War of Snagrod, the Crimson Fist would look upon their tattered homeworld ravaged by a war of disgusting savagery and bloodshed. The Crimson Fist had lost over half its men, their fortress monastery lay in ruins, their gene stores had been ravaged, and many of the relics of their chapter had been destroyed. Struggling for years to rebuild their chapter world, the Crimson Fist would harbor a deep hatred for the Orc Xenos following their defiant stand upon Rin's world. Deprived of their homeworld's resources, the Crimson Fist now venture far from the reminder of their shame, returning only to mourn their fallen brethren. Following their near defeat, the Crimson Fist would find their circumstance to be a rare one among any serving Astartes chapter. Now overwhelmingly comprised of veterans and specialists, such as tech marines and apothecaries. No longer viable to act as a crusading army of the Adeptus Astartes, the Crimson Fist would be unable to commit its forces to wage war, with so many tasks committing its Astartes to rebuild and repair its waning resources. The chapter's gene seed, now endangered, committing any Astartes to fight in their state, would threaten the extinction of the chapter. Hastening recruitment of new aspirants into the chapter, the Crimson Fist would balance on a knife's edge, as its companies now numbered only handfuls of Space Marines. Restraining their hunger for reprisal against the Orc Xenos in the surrounding Loki sector, the Crimson Fist would temper their rage as the chapter rebuilt. Championing survival in the stead of personal glory, the legacy of their heroic forebear would provide great solace in their task of resisting their temptation to succumb to despair. Yet with the return of the avenging son of the Emperor, Rabute Gilliman, the Crimson Fist would be delivered from their plight. Rin's world would once more be beset with invaders following the expanse of the Great Rift caused by the destruction of Cadia during Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade. Warp storms would emerge within the Loki sector as demonic incursions would spill forth upon the planet, led by the demon prince, Raxor. Facing their foe, despite their still ravaged numbers, the Crimson Fist would not allow the thralls of the ruinous powers to taint their homeworld. The timely intervention of the Primarch of the Ultramarines and his Indomitas crusade would aid the relief of Rin's world, and with the demonic threat quelled, a new breed of warriors would be bequeathed to the long-suffering Astartes. Primaris Space Marines, clad in the heraldry of the Crimson Fists, would be installed within the companies of the chapter. Among the most beleaguered chapters of the Astartes, the Crimson Fist would be among the first to be replenished with their new Primaris reinforcements. Their genetic makeup more closely composed of their Primarch's own genome than any of their ranks, the purity of their new kin would harken back to the Great Crusade, as they had been kept in stasis for millennia as a contingency by the Master of Mankind. For some among these new warriors would recall personally observing the Primarch of the Imperial Fists, as they had been separated from their kin of the 7th Legion prior to being redeployed in the Imperium's darkest hour. Now bolstered with a new breed of Space Marines, the Crimson Fist would be renewed with the inspiration of the Primarch of the Ultramarines and continue to wage war in the name of the Imperium. Their long suffering not over, the sons of Rogal Dorn would regardless emulate the example of their Primarch and the Avenging Sun as saviors of the downtrodden of the Imperium. Dispatching his reinvigorated chapter to aid the most beleaguered of engagements across the stars, the Crimson Fists emancipate the defenders of the innocent in measured yet wrathful deployments. Aiding Imperial forces against demonic and orc invasions, the chapter maximizes their efficiency with minimal casualties to honor the sacrifices of their slain battle brothers. Their noble sacrifices and deeds resounding throughout the Imperium as true paragons of humanity. As strict adherents of the Codex Astartes, the Crimson Fists view the tome akin to a sacred text, varying slightly from its outlines with their own customs earned through strife. The Crimson Fist would honor their past glories. Following the chapter's colossal losses of the Crusade of Righteous Liberation, the chapter would number only 128 Space Marines in strength, and honor its first company henceforth by comprising 128 Astartes within its ranks. Following the combat doctrines of the Codex Astartes to the letter, most engagements by the Crimson Fists are broad in their methods of waging war. Countering any opposition with various tactical approaches, the chapter adapts quickly to changes in their enemy's deployment with exacting precision and well-trained reprisal attacks. Crusading for millennia, the chapter utilizes more specialist units than the dictates of the Codex Astartes allows, and boasts an extensive naval armada. The chapter utilizes more specialist units than the dictates of the Codex Astartes allows, and boasts an extensive naval armada, which is the envy of most Astartes chapters. Maintained by the chapter's tech marines, each vessel also harbors an Astartes apothecary, allowing for the preservation and retrieval of gene seed during the most fraught of skirmishes. Their numbers annihilated with the loss of their fortress monastery and the invasion of Rin's world by the Orc Xenos, the chapter would remain under strength, yet rebuilds to this day. Fielding 4 severely reduced companies, many scout cadres trained to one day ascend to the honored battle companies. Yet with the timely intervention of the Avenging Sun, Rabute Guilliman, the chapter has once more been reinforced with new companies of Primaris Space Marines. Slowly replenishing their forces, the Crimson Fist take to the stars once again as a crusading force, with each company led by a hero of the Rin's World campaign. Though with such a large contingent of its forces of its Primaris Marines still unproven in the eyes of the chapter, their efficacy remains scrutinized. Interacting with the populace of Rin's world rarely, the Crimson Fist would be seen as aloof by the people of the Agri-world, yet with their dismantling of their fortress monastery, the Arx Tyrannus from their chapter fleet, and reconstruction within the Hellblade Mountains, their continued presence would be enshrined around the ancient statue of their forebear, Alexis Pollux. Destroyed by the Orc War of Snagrod, it is unclear if the Crimson Fists have rebuilt their fortress monastery with their subsequent recovery efforts of Rin's world. Recruiting their forces from many worlds within the Loki sector, strangely, for a chapter with a base of operations, the chapter do not actively recruit from their homeworld. Preferring to draft recruits from feral worlds such as Blackwater, the Crimson Fist see great potential of the denizens of the world, infamous for its harsh conditions. Ferocious yet noble people, the humans of Blackwater and its contemporaries are intimately familiar with adversity and stoically struggle against the world's harsh environments. Drawing only from warriors proven to exhibit honorable conduct and athleticism, the Crimson Fists only recruit those suited to be followers of their own creed and culture. Transitioning from a fleet-based to world-based chapter, The Crimson Fist, while accepting recruits from Rin's world and its neighboring planets, regardless still prioritize the peoples of Blackwater with their annual traversal to the planet for the Festival of the Bloodied Fist. Ceremonially evaluating their aspirants through trials of mental, martial, and spiritual toil, the Crimson Fist command those successful in their trials to delve deep into the toxic swamps of Blackwater. Tasked with slaying a barb dragon with their bare hands, only the most capable of aspirants shall return with a token to prove their success in slaying such a dangerous beast. Appointed to the 10th Company with their successful surgeries and psycho-indoctrination, each neophyte of the Crimson Fists shall undertake the ritual known as the Steeping. Should they succeed in accepting their newly implanted organs and gene seed, these neophytes shall be known as full Battle Brothers and be appointed to one of the reserve companies. The chapter's gene seed, though incredibly stable, nonetheless bears the flaws inherent among all inheritors of the legacy of Rogel Dawn. Unable to utilize the Betcher's gland, allowing for their saliva to become corrosive, or the Susan membrane to facilitate deep hibernation, the Crimson Fist regardless boast a genetic purity, free of mutations or chaos contamination. Able to recruit at a hastened rate compared to their peers, the Crimson Fist, though under strength, are among the best suited to replenish their ranks. Escaping extinction time and again throughout their history, the Crimson Fist regardless stave off obsolescence. Burdened with the genetic curse of Rogel Dawn, the Crimson Fists, alike to their cousin successors of the 7th, shall not retreat from battle, nor suffer defeat in the name of the Praetorian. Their stubborn refusal to live with the shame of defeat, the Crimson Fists are fortunate to have not succumbed to the same fate suffered by countless annihilated chapters of the 7th. For the descendants of the Great Father would rather die than bring dishonor to their chapter. Among the Crimson Fists, several specialist ranks exist to facilitate duties not prescribed by the Codex Astartes. The Lord Hellblade is the title attributed by the people of Rin's world to the chapter master of the Crimson Fists. Recognized as a member of the Imperium's feudal nobility, the Lord Hellblade leads the elite First Crusade Company in the defense of the chapter homeworld. The Master of the Fleet oversees the Void Command of the Armada, yet does not hold the rank of Astartes captain. Whilst the Monitor, a senior astropath of the chapter serfs, presides over the communicatus of the once Arx Tyrannus. Astartes aspirants unable to accept the chapter's gene seed and implants honor the chapter as labor serfs and are treated with respect by their brethren, despite their failings. Regarded as the Chosen, these individuals support their ascended kin during combat as messengers, skilled laborers, and major domos who lead the personnel of the Chosen as their overseer. Acting as the personal attendant and confidant of the chapter master, the major domo is crucial in their deeds of facilitating the administration and coordination of the chapter's menials. With the loss of their fortress monastery, the Crimson Fist would utilize their chapter keep of the Zona Regis of Rin's world, the Cassar, as their new base of operations. Harbored within the Silver Citadel of New Rin City, under the protection of Void Shields, the chapter serfs dispatched to the protection of the chapter's contingent fortress toil to facilitate the needs of the chapter, whilst also rebuilding the Arx Tyrannus. Revering the legacy of the Imperial Fist Legion, the Crimson Fists retain close ties to their primogenitor chapter and its last War Protocol kin. Retaining many of its traditions, such as their proclivity to champion defensive strategies and battle doctrines, unique roles of their forebear, such as the title of Emperor's Champion, remain, but in a much diminished state. Permitting a singular warrior to adopt the panoply of the Emperor's Champion of the chapter on only the rarest of circumstances, only the direst of conflicts require such a revered harbinger of destruction. Gifted visions from the Master of Mankind himself, they shall claim the black sword and armor of faith of the chapter's armory and hunt their preordained foe in battle. Yet such an instance has not been recorded since the destruction of their fortress monastery during the invasion of Rin's world, with some speculating that such artifacts have been lost to the chapter during the conflict. Invited to the Imperial Fist's Feast of Blades alongside their kin of the Black Templars, Celestial Lions, Deathstrike, Emperor's Warbringers, Excoriators, Executioners, Fire Lords, Fists Exemplar, Hammers of Dawn, Iron Knights, Knights of Dawn, Sons of Dawn, Soul Drinkers and White Templars, the Crimson Fists compete in the Centennial competition to strengthen their bonds of kinship. Choosing a company champion within their ranks, each member of the Last Wall successors battle in a test of arms to earn glory for their chapter. Awarding the victor custodianship of the artifact of the 7th Legion, the Sword of Sebastus, also known as the Dawn's Blade, the winner shall host the next tournament and choose the locale for the next competition a century following. The yearly calendar of the culture of the Crimson Fists also bears many sacred days of devotion which honor, yet do not worship, the Emperor, their Primarch, and their Great Father, Alexis Pollux. The Miracle of the Blood is observed by the chapter every year to mark the date of their chapter's founding. 20 chaplains of the Sacratium perform a ritual utilizing a drop of Rogal Dorn's own blood kept preserved within an ornate scepter. Releasing the dried lump of blood from its confinement to observe its rejuvenation to liquid form, this ritual reminds the chapter that their Genesire's presence still remains among them. The day of foundation coincides with the Festival of the Blood and honors the glories of their forebears by holding private ceremonies to study the writings of Alexis Pollux and Rogal Dorn. Recounting tales of their most glorious deeds, the Battle Brothers of the chapter cherish the deeds of their ancestors and seek to apply lessons learned from their legacy to forge their own legends in an introspective and humble manner. The Festival of the Bloodied Fist marks the ascendance of the Scout Marines of the chapter into fully fledged Battle Brothers. Requiring the aspirants to slay a barb dragon bare-handed upon the death world of Blackwater, their success in the ritual of the steeping is a moment of immense pride for those who succeed in their trial. Submerging their left fist into the blood of the slain barb dragon, this tradition marks their right to bear the crimson-clad ceramite fist of their new power armor suit. The Day of Renewal marks the chapter's replenishment of their gene banks with the reinforcements gifted to the chapter during the Indomitus Crusade. Vowing to renew their chapter to its former glory, the Crimson Fist resolved to repay their debt to the Lord Commander of the Imperium, Rabute Guilliman, for his salvation of their chapter's dire circumstance. The most revered champions of the chapter are gifted immense power fists to use in battle as symbols of their deeds made in the name of their chapter, and shall use such instruments of war to bludgeon their foes into bloody pulps. Claiming the teeth of slain orcs in battle, the Crimson Fists collect such tokens of their kills to be displayed within trophy rooms of the chapter. Adorning their armor in not only teeth, but also talismans made of orc skulls and tatters of orc banners claimed in battle, the Crimson Fists display their victories against their foes with macabre pride. Clad in deep blue armor, trimmed with crimson and white markings, the chapter's armorials are among the most reserved of all chapters of the Adeptus Astartes. Their proud sigil of a crimson fist, clenched across a black field adorning their left pauldron, their proud heraldry symbolizes their heritage as successors of the Imperial Fists, whilst honoring the Great Father, Alexis Pollux. Steeped in the tradition of Rogal Dorn's ritual cutting of his palms and those of his recruits before clasping them to share their unity in blood, the Crimson Fists uphold the bond first forged by their Genesire. Denoting their rank with unique conventions to the chapter, Scout Marines, while attributed with red gauntlets, trim their handguards with blue to signify their lack of attaining their namesake. Every Battle Brother of the senior companies paints their left gauntlet alike to their chapter icon, while each veteran of the Crimson Fists also coat their right gauntlet with blood red to signify their membership of the Elite Crusade Company. Sternguard veterans of the First Company paint their helmets white, whilst lieutenants mark their helmets with a red stripe centered on their helmet. Otherwise conservative in their heraldic markings, the Crimson Fists adhere to the Codex Astartes in their methods of identifying their battlefield roles and squad identifiers. Their right pauldron bears their role as battle line, close support, fire support, veteran, or command, each centered upon a crimson roundel. White High Gothic numerals are stenciled on the center of their battlefield role to indicate their squad number, yet the chapter does not signify their company numbers with numerals. Trimming their armor pauldrons with varying colors to denote their companies, each company captain also garners a unique title and are responsible for unique roles within the chapter. The 1st Battle Company mark their pauldrons with white and are led by their current Master of Crusades, Ishmael Acario. Known as the Crusade Company, the elite vanguard of the chapter charges into battle at full strength of 128 Astartes in only the most fraught of battles. The 2nd Battle Company, the Shield Wall, mark their trim with gold and are led by the Master of the Shield, Stefan Hyost. The Bulwark against the Darkness, the 2nd Battle Company specialize in defensive maneuvers akin to the legacy of the Imperial Fists. The 3rd Battle Company, the Red Lightning, trim their pauldrons red and are led by the Master of the Line, Faradis Anto. Experts of hit-and-run tactics, the 3rd Company target vulnerable weak points in enemy defenses to allow their allies to further exploit the opponent's battle lines. The 4th Battle Company, the Crimson Lancers, are led by Master of the Charge, Isidore Helios, and mark their trim with green. Known to be brash warriors among their kin, the Crimson Lancers are headstrong warriors, regarded as among the mightiest fighters within the chapter. The 5th Battle Company, the War Riders, trim their pauldrons black and are led by the Master of Steeds, Razel Solano. Charging into battle atop jet bikes and other armoured vehicles, the 5th Company are the hammer blow of their chapter and overwhelm their opponents with the treads of war. The 6th Reserve Company, the Iron Guardians, are led by the Master of the Watch, Alejandro Solari, and trim their pauldrons bronze. Analysing threats to Rin's world and its fleet contingent, the warriors of the 6th Company are astute tacticians focused on defensive maneuvers to preserve their long-suffering chapter. The 7th Reserve Company, the Wardens of Rin, trim their pauldrons purple and are led by the Master of the Gates, Castian Alzonas. The stalwart guardians of Rin's world see to the planetary defenses of their homeworld and coordinate their company with the planetary defense forces. The 8th Reserve Company, the Red Path, are led by the Master of Blades, Gerard Garasso, and trim their pauldrons grey. Experts at close quarters combat, is proficient with melee combat, and are among the greatest duelists of the chapter. The 9th Reserve Company, the Fists of Rin, trim their pauldrons with blue, and are led by the Master of the Siege, Raphael Acastus. Masters of protracted warfare, the 9th Company are relentless in their harrying of dug-in adversaries and fortifications. And finally, the 10th Scout Company, the Wayfinders, are led by the Master of Shadows, Caldemus Ortiz. The lifeblood of future heroes of the chapter, the Scout Marines of the 10th Company obey the commands and guidance of their superiors before proving their worth as warriors, capable of fighting among the many reserve companies. Following in the footsteps of their founder, Alexis Pollux, the Crimson Fists honor the legacy of their legendary Imperial Fist captain with their characteristic level-headed demeanor and effective tactical acumen. Consistently championing the outlined battle stratagems of the Codex Astartes, combined with their adoption of blue ceramite, many detractors of the chapter, including those of their own kin, regard their character more alike to an Ultramarine successor than the vaunted Imperial Fists. Their reverence to the 7th Legion, fervently upheld despite such scrutiny, the Crimson Fists are immensely adaptable to the ever-changing battlefields they are thrust into. Constantly harassed by Orc warbands within the Loki sector, the chapter never wants for targets to hone their skill in combating the Greenskin Tide. Serving with distinction among the ranks of the Death Watch, despite the misfortune of their chapter, the Crimson Fists do not shirk their tithes to the elite Xenos hunters of the Imperium. With some records pointing to Crimson Fists comprising as many as a quarter of several Death Watch kill teams, their preferential treatment by the Ordo Xenos of the Inquisition is well earned. Already renowned as experts at killing their hated foe, the Orc Xenos, every Crimson Fist among the ranks of the Death Watch is a valuable asset to the Chamber Militant of the Ordo Xenos. Considered entitled to unfair privileges by their peers within each kill team, the seconded Crimson Fists nevertheless garner immense favor from the Inquisition for their expertise in dispatching greenskin threats. Reputed to have tithed more Astartes than any other chapter to the Death Watch, the Crimson Fists care not for the envy of their peers, nor slights made against them. Petitioned for aid by the Adeptus Administratum and Inquisition on numerous occasions, Due to their pedigree as Orc killers, the Crimson Fist heritage of the 7th Legion makes them extremely capable as both an aggressive or defensive force against the Orc Xenos. Adept at slaying other Xenos races, such as the Eldar during the chapter's first recorded engagement in defense of the colony of Uralek Prime, their 9,000-year crusade to cleanse the galaxy of Xenos has made them synonymous with combating such alien threats. Due to their severe losses following the invasion of Rin's world, the chapter focuses primarily on surgical strikes to prevent further casualties to their already beleaguered and understaffed chapter. Yet should the Crimson Fist return to full strength, they shall be the bane of untold Xenos across the stars. When a man dies before his time, how much is truly lost? More than just a life, certainly. A branch withers and bears no more fruit. Futures are erased, paths closed that can never be reopened. Would his offspring have been saints? Killers? Both? When a man dies before his time, the answers go with him. This begs the question, should not all men be saved? This has been a tale of the Great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. The Crimson Fists are among the most noble of bearing of any Astartes chapter. Their honor and glories unimpeachable by any. There are few more noted for their empathy or compassion. Seek to emulate their example in defending the weak and facing the darkness. For there is no shame in failure. Should you refuse to give up in your duty to protect the innocent, no matter the dangers you face.